decided we would go dancing together. I think she decided we would go dancing together. Let's go out and hang out at Danceteria or whatever clubs, Mud Club, and go dancing.
This was the tape that Mark Cammins had been playing at Danceteria.
Well, I was doing A&R at Island, and actually I brought Chris Blackwell Madonna's demo, and he had passed on it. And I was really annoyed at Chris and not signing it. And again, at that same time, I was working with David Byrne at Sire, so I had met Seymour Stein.
Stein, maverick founder of Sire Records, knew instinctively that Madonna was the right act at the right time.
He was always signing bands that nobody else wanted, and I think he was a genius that way, and that's why she might have gone somewhere else, and she probably wouldn't, she might not have been signed by someone else.
And he fell in love with the track, everybody, and Ain't No Big Deal.
Ain't no big deal to say I love you still. Call out my name, I'll be here.
It wasn't the biggest deal in the world, just 3 dance 12 inches. And the money that changed hands was petty cash for a label like Sire, but it was a deal all the same.
Please don't be afraid to look.
It was just, yeah, well, got the contract. Yeah, well, you know, next. Where are we going dancing? What are you wearing?
Steve, as usual, was the last person to find out about the deal.
I would hazard a guess that until they told her that, by the way, you know, your friend Steven who did this music, we're gonna need his permission to actually make this record. I think that's probably the day she told me.
I met Madonna through Mark Cammins. So when we made the deal, Mark wanted to produce, and I had no problem with Mark producing the first single, and then Steven came in.
Well, I'm sure she had agreed to let Steven produce, but it was actually me who got the deal.
And I said, well, why don't you both do it together? You know, Mark was new, and Steven was new as well, so I thought have them both do it together, but Steve walked out and said he didn't, it was all or nothing, so.
She used this great metaphor of her time being divided like a pie, saying, well, I can give you a full slice right now and you could probably make a meal from it, but you do realize that in time that slice will get smaller and smaller because I will have a lot less time to give out.
Yeah.
With the single in the can, Madonna now turned her mind to the question of how to promote herself.
I know you want to get up.
She asked me if I would dance with her, and of course I agreed. Why not? What a great job to go running around with your friends dancing. Our first gig was at Howie Montag's No Entiendes at Danceteria.
Because it was a Wednesday night, a lot of the weekend crowd wasn't there, so it was like kind of like the people from downtown who made it a habit of going out.
When she came on, it was like, I mean, I have to say I was really surprised because it was slick. I mean, for a show at Danceteria, it was like, wow, this girl like rehearsed. And Mark's, yeah, she's gonna be big, she's gonna be big, you know. And I was like thinking, God, she really might be.
Everybody was Madonna's big break, her first single. Interestingly, those who bought it were meant to think that Madonna was, well, black. She didn't get her face on the cover, and the track was aimed straight at the dance floor, where white acts were a rarity. The single wasn't a smash hit, but it got her listened to where it really mattered, on the street.
Hi, Madonna. I'm from Detroit. And I'm
Madonna auditioned for the TV series of Fame only weeks after the release of Everybody.
Look, Danny, you play games and I play games. We're both just too good at it. You didn't expect anything real to happen between us, did you?
Even though she had her first record out, she wasn't satisfied. One career simply wasn't enough. She wanted more.
So where were you last night?
Fame, the TV version, eluded her. Another single, Burning Up, followed, building on the success of the first. And round about then, she met the next man who changed her career.
Aw, Jellybean. Hispanic, good-looking, record producer.
I was jealous at many times, you know, because I was her boyfriend at the time, and then I had introduced her to Jellybean, and that was the end of my story.
Madonna's like this canvas where the paint never dries. And if you're on one of those layers that the paint gets put on top of, and you get covered up.
New boyfriend John Jellybean Benitez gave Madonna Holiday, a song that he discovered. Now was the time to get a big shop manager.
Knowing Madonna as I do, she looked at the charts and said, who I want the best manager in the business. Who is the best? Let me see the charts. Who has the #1 record? And at the time, Michael Jackson had the #1 single, the #1 album, and I was the manager.
So he showed Madonna and I the Beat It video before it was on MTV, and we were well impressed, and we were impressed with him, and he was impressed with her.
When she marched into my office, I was absolutely knocked off my feet. I had never seen a more physical human being in my life.
If we took the holiday.
That day she had 3 problems, 3 overwhelming problems that really bothered her. And I said, well, look, I'll take care of these now, and I'll just make some calls. She said, you will? And I made 3 calls and took care of her problems, and she was impressed with that. The next day she called, she had 5 problems. And then the next day she called, she had 7 problems. And then the next day she called, she had 10 problems. I said, how in the world can one person have all that? Well, I do.
The success of Holiday was like a dam breaking, a small trickle at first. She began promoting the single, first in the UK, where her stage show was met with bemused indifference. But back in the US, the single began to sell and sell. This was to be the end of the beginning as far as her career was concerned. By the end of 1983, she had a massive hit on her hands. The album went top 10 in the spring.
Our first conversation had to do with the amount of fame that she was going to get, and me seeing her, something in her eyes that said, oh yeah.
It wasn't the 60s, 70s anymore. It was the 80s. It was all about greed and money and very Machiavellian, making it any way you can. Do whatever it takes to make it. She was born in that time period.
I think clearly she did use people, but I think we all do that. If you look at it now, people use her and just stand next to her to get their 15 minutes of fame, and you see that a lot.